No longer mourn for me when I am dead. Then you shall hear the surly sullen bell give warning to the world that I am fled from this vile world with vilest worms to dwell. Nay, if you read this line, remember not the hand that writ it, for I love you so that I in your sweet thoughts would be forgot if thinking on me then should make you woe. Oh, if, I say, you look upon this verse, when I perhaps compounded am with clay, do not so much as my poor name rehearse, but let your love even with my life decay, lest the wise world should look into your moan and mock you with me, even after I am gone. Sonnet 71. It's like a top 5 sonnet. Yeah, holy shit, that's a really good sonnet. I was taught this sonnet when I was in school. I recognized the language when I got to it, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, I remember this one. And now I'm like, oh yeah, this is why you teach this one. This is like, this is fantastic. Certainly near the upper echelon of sonnets that I can remember in terms of how heartfelt and raw and honest it is, because sometimes he puts that on. Sometimes it's very flowery and clever, and this doesn't come off like that at all. And it hits on some pretty universal things, like, you know, I think that's something everyone can relate to, the feeling of not wanting someone you love to be in pain, whether that's and I mean, obviously, like, it's a concept that we can think of, you know, the prospect of our loved ones being traumatized by our death or loss or something, you know, like, even though if you die, you don't know that anymore, like, and that's where this is kind of an interesting perspective and time scale, because obviously Shakespeare wrote this, and like the poet, him as the poet, is alive in the writing of it, but the advice he's giving is contextualized in a future state where he doesn't exist anymore. And so, and for that reason, it is that there's an element of irony in that, right? Of like, don't think about me when I die, but you're reading this, so you're thinking about me, you know. So how do you reconcile that? But while it's a universal thing, I think, for you to not want your loved ones to be in pain, it is also something that's really not avoidable if you're in love. That comes with the territory. If you love something, that passion, that substance, you shouldn't be able to just move past it if it's ripped from your life, because then how did it mean anything? So it's that kind of catch-22, right? Of, you know, you want your loved one to not live in pain, and that line is gut-wrenching, where he says, let your love even with my life decay. Like, when I'm gone, don't let that love that you felt trap you into not living. And I'm not convinced that they're mutually exclusive. I think that you can feel that love can be something that doesn't just get killed or forgotten or pushed somewhere else, but you need to be able to inhabit the present moment and continue living without that love shackling you to the past, you know. And it's it's tough to reconcile. There was, but that's the funny thing, right? Like, if something exists in your memory, does that mean it doesn't exist? I mean, it's not a memory. If a memory can cause pain and happiness and laughter and sadness, how is it not real? You know, and if the memory is real, then, you know, you can appreciate those memories and still live, you know? Um, it's funny, in some of the language that he uses conjures this really, or it takes me to a really interesting place of, you know, the, uh, I love you so that I and your sweet thoughts would be forgot. The idea of being in someone's thoughts, if you, like, uh, if you take that literally, right? Like the idea of me being in the thoughts of my loved one, and the prospect that that would be a more enjoyable thing for me than being in the thoughts of a foe, someone I don't like, or just not being in someone's thoughts, you know? Uh, it's that was like a gut punch, that line, that like, as wonderful as it would be for me to be in your thoughts, if that causes you pain, then I shouldn't be there, you know? Um, oh yeah, this was so good. The other thing, one thing I wanted to talk about, um, less philosophical, but the idea that um, no longer mourn for me when I am dead, then you shall hear the surly sullen bell give warning to the world that I am fled. The surly sullen bell, the death bell, like that was a thing. And I feel like my mind goes to like Game of Thrones, like that's, you know, more, that's closer to a reality in which you don't live in there's no bustle and noise like there is today, and obviously everything's like, the population is so much smaller, that the idea of you live in London and the king dies or the queen dies, that there's a bell that rings, you know, once for every year of their reign, that everyone is participating in as a moment of, as moments of mourning. Like that doesn't happen anymore. Like that's not a thing anymore in 2019. And it got me thinking, like, what is the equivalent of that? And it's like we're at the point where like that's like a that's like a hashtag. That's like a, someone dies and then someone shares a story and then someone shares, and like it's on social media now. It's like that's how we share those feelings. I'm not convinced that's a better way to share in that experience of mourning. I think there's a few arguments to be made that that's not a better way. Um, but really interesting to think that is just a way in which our world is different than the world that Shakespeare lived in. So, and it's but I feel like that image, that poet, that the poetry and that metaphor still translates to today. That still evokes, maybe not dread, but like the weightiness of a tolling bell, an ominously somber toning bell. Um, yeah, such a good sonnet. Top 5 sonnets. Yeah, that was Sonnet 71. I don't think I'm doing a sonnet next week. I think next week is a week off. But then we're at the end of March. So I'll have to look and see what play I'm going to be pulling from for March. But yeah, that was Sonnet 71. Thank you for watching.